struggling single mom saw her first love at an airport, not knowing he was now a millionaire CEO and still lonely. The fluorescent lights of the airport terminal hummed like a distant swarm of bees, casting a sterile glow over the hurried travelers and their rolling suitcases. It was one of those early mornings where the world outside was still cloaked in pre-dawn gray. The runways slick with overnight dew that caught the first rays of sun like scattered diamonds. Olivia Harper moved through the familiar chaos of the small café tucked between gates 17 and 19, her apron tied tight around her waist, the faint scent of espresso grounds clinging to her skin like an old friend. At 28, she had learned to navigate this space with the quiet efficiency of someone who had no room for error. Her hands, calloused from years of scrubbing counters and cradling scalding pots, poured a double Americano without looking down. The clock above the register blinked 7:42 a.m., and already her feet ached in the worn sneakers that had seen too many double shifts. Life, for Olivia, was a series of small battles won in the margins. The rent check that cleared by $2, the way Jaime's laughter could chase away the shadow of another late-night cleaning offices downtown. Her 5-year-old son was her anchor, his messy curls and gap-toothed grin the only light in a world that often felt dimmed by exhaustion. She pictured him now, still asleep in their cramped apartment, his stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm, dreaming of playgrounds she promised they'd visit when things eased up. But things never eased up, not really. Not since Derek had vanished 4 years ago, leaving her with a positive pregnancy test and a heart full of shattered illusions. Large cappuccino. No sugar, a gravelly voice ordered from the end of the counter, pulling her back. Olivia nodded, her muscle memory kicking in as she frothed the milk with a practiced twist of the steam wand. She slid the cup across the worn laminate surface, her smile automatic, polite. But as the man shuffled away, her gaze drifted toward the terminal floor beyond the cafe's plate glass window. Gate 18 was a hive of quiet activity, business types tapping at laptops, families wrangling carry-ons. And there, seated alone in a row of molded plastic chairs, was a man who made the steam in her lungs turn to ice. He was framed by the vast windows overlooking the tarmac, his silhouette sharp against the awakening sky. Dark hair neatly combed, a charcoal suit that hung on his broad shoulders with the effortless drape of expense, a black leather duffel at his feet like a sentinel. His fingers hovered over the keyboard of a sleek laptop, paused mid-thought, as if the world had just whispered a secret he couldn't quite grasp. Olivia's heart stuttered, a wild bird trapped in her chest. Lucas Bennett. The name surfaced unbidden, pulling with it a flood of memories she'd buried deep. Summer rains on college quads. His voice reciting Keats in that mock British accent that dissolved them both into laughter. The way his hand had felt in hers during those endless walks home under street lamps that buzzed like fireflies. 10 years. A decade of letters never sent, of dreams repackaged into survival. He'd been her first love, the boy who saw poetry in her practicality, who promised forever in the back seat of his beat-up sedan. But his parents' disapproval had been a chasm. Her from the wrong side of town, him heir to expectations she could never meet. And then the scholarship abroad, the abrupt goodbye that wasn't one at all. He'd vanished into the horizon of opportunity, leaving her to stitch together the pieces alone. She'd waited at first, foolishly, her phone a lifeline to silence. Then Jaime had come, a surprise wrapped in terror and joy, and waiting became a luxury she couldn't afford. Now, here he was, not a boy but a man, his jaw set in that familiar line of concentration. A faint crease between his brows that spoke of burdens she could only imagine. Olivia's hand flew to her hair, tucking an errant strand into the messy bun that had surrendered to the morning's humidity. But it was futile. Her uniform clung in all the wrong places, faint coffee splatters blooming like accusations on the hem of her apron. She glanced down at her sneakers, scuffed and practical, and felt the weight of the chasm widen. What would he see if he looked her way? Not the girl who'd once danced barefoot in dorm rooms, but a woman frayed at the edges, carrying the invisible scars of single motherhood. She turned away sharply, busying herself with a stack of napkins, her pulse a thunder in her ears. "Keep moving, Olivia," she told herself. the way she did on nights when the bills piled like autumn leaves. He's just a ghost passing through. But fate, that capricious weaver, had other threads in mind. A sharp clatter echoed from the boarding area. An elderly man in a threadbare coat had stumbled, his canvas tote spilling its meager contents across the scuffed linoleum. Dog-eared magazines, a rattling pill bottle, a half-eaten granola bar wrapper fluttering like a surrender flag. Olivia didn't think. She untied her apron with quick fingers and crossed the terminal in 3 strides, kneeling beside the man with the grace of someone who'd patched together more than her fair share of spills. "Easy now," she murmured, her voice a soft anchor amid the terminal's din of announcements and rolling wheels. She gathered the magazines first, smoothing their curled edges, then the pill bottle, its label faded but insistent. The man muttered thanks, his hands trembling as he reached for the bag, but she pressed it into his lap with a steadying touch. "There you go, all accounted for." As she rose, handing him the last stray snack, her eyes lifted and collided with Lucas's. The world narrowed to that point of contact, the hum of the terminal fading to a hush, as if the air itself held its breath. He sat frozen, laptop forgotten, his fingers curling slowly from the keys. Those eyes, storm gray and piercing, locked onto hers, and in them, she saw the recognition bloom like dawn breaking over the runways. Time folded in on itself, the decade compressing into a single, aching inhale. He blinked once, twice as if to dispel a mirage, but she was no illusion. Olivia Harper etched into his memory like a half-finished sonnet. "Olivia," he breathed, the word so soft it barely stirred the space between them. Yet it landed in her chest like a stone in still water, rippling outward. She stood, the old man's thanks a distant echo, and nodded once, a jerky affirmation before turning on her heel. Her steps carried her back to the café with mechanical precision, hands trembling as she retied her apron, the knot too tight against her ribs. Behind her, Lucas remained seated, the screen of his laptop glowing unanswered, his world tilting on its axis. You know that moment, don't you? When the past doesn't just knock, it crashes through the door, demanding entry with all its unfinished business. For Lucas Bennett, now 29 and CEO of Bennett Innovations, a tech firm that had ballooned from a garage startup to a glass-towered empire overlooking the city skyline, that crash was seismic. His life was a masterpiece of control. Boardrooms where his words shaped fortunes, a penthouse that echoed with silence despite its marble floors and city views. Assistants who anticipated his coffee black and his solitude absolute. Wealth had armored him, yes, but it had also hollowed him out. Relationships flickered like faulty bulbs, brief, brilliant, then extinguished by the long hours and the unspoken grief of what he'd left behind. Olivia. The name had been a talisman and a torment, carried across oceans and through mergers, whispered in the quiet hours when success tasted like ash. He'd justified the silence then, the distance, the demands of ambition. But regret had a way of compounding interest, year after year, until it dwarfed even his fortune. And now, here she was, not in memory's soft focus, but in the harsh light of reality, stronger, yes, but etched with lines that spoke of storms he'd never weathered beside her. He rose slowly, duffel in hand, the weight of decision settling like fog. The cafe counter was a barrier of polished wood and steam wands, but he crossed it anyway, his polished loafers silent on the tile. Olivia looked up from wiping a tray, her movements halting mid-swipe, and for a suspended heartbeat, words evaded them both. The air between hummed with the unsaid. Apologies, explanations, the ghosts of what-ifs. "Hi," he said finally, his voice a low timbre that cut through the espresso hiss like a confession in church. She nodded, her throat working around the lump there. "Hi, I was hoping, if you have a minute." She glanced at the clock, 8 minutes until her break, then around at the sparse morning crowd. "Yeah, in 10. They claimed a small table by the window, the glass cool against their elbows, the world outside a blur of taxis and takeoff lights. The tension was a living thing, coiling between them, but beneath it lay something softer. the echo of familiarity, like a song half remembered. Lucas studied her, the faint freckles across her nose unchanged, the way her fingers twisted the edge of a napkin, a habit from their late-night study sessions. "It's really been 10 years, he ventured, the words landing heavier than intended. "It has," she replied, her voice a quiet current, stirring the coffee in her mug without drinking. He searched her face, noting the weariness in the shadows under her eyes, the resolve in the set of her jaw. "How have you been?" Olivia hesitated, the truth a tide she wasn't ready to unleash. She took a sip of the cooling brew, its bitterness grounding her. "I have a son, Jaime. He's 5. It's just us." The revelation hung there, simple and profound. Lucas blinked, the image of her as the girl he'd known fracturing into something richer, more real. "You're a mom?" She nodded, a small curve touching her lips despite everything. "Yeah, mornings here, nights cleaning offices. It's not easy, but we make it." No bitterness laced her words, only the steady acceptance of someone who'd forged steel from softer metal. She didn't elaborate on Jaime's father, and Lucas, sensing the boundary, let it lie. Instead, he leaned in slightly. "I'm not surprised you're still standing. You were always the strongest person I knew." Her gaze dropped to the table, the compliment a warm ember in the chill of reunion. Before she could respond, movement caught her eye. An older woman near the gate, her plastic bag slipping from arthritic fingers, oranges tumbling like fallen suns across the floor. Olivia rose without a word, crossing the terminal with that innate grace, kneeling to gather the fruit one by one, her hands gentle as she repacked the bag. She slipped an extra orange from her own lunch sack into the woman's grasp, murmuring, "For the road, keeps the hunger at bay." The woman beamed, gratitude etching deeper lines into her face, and Olivia returned, sliding back into her seat as if nothing had transpired. Lucas watched it all, the scene imprinting itself, her selflessness, unbidden and uncalculated, a light in the terminal's fluorescent pallor. "You haven't changed," he said softly, "still putting everyone else first." "I don't know how else to be," she replied, a faint smile ghosting her lips, bittersweet as the dregs of her coffee. His phone buzzed then, an insistent vibration against his thigh. Boarding call for Flight 472 to New York. He stood reluctantly, the moment fracturing. "I have to go." "Of course." Her tone was even, but her eyes held a flicker of something unnamed. He fished a card from his wallet, crisp stock embossed with his title, and slid it across the table. "In case, you know." She took it, fingers brushing his for the briefest instant, a spark that lingered. As he walked away, duffel slung over his shoulder, he glanced back once. She was already behind the counter, apron retied, vanishing into the rhythm of her world. But in his, she expanded, filling the empty spaces wealth had left barren. Days blurred into the relentless churn of Lucas's life. Meetings in sunlit boardrooms where projections soared like his company's stock. Evenings in his penthouse where the city sprawled below like a glittering conquest. Yet Olivia haunted the edges, her eyes in the rear view of his chauffeured car, her voice in the silence of his kitchen. He drafted emails he never sent, paced the length of his office staring at her card pinned to the corkboard like a talisman. For Olivia, routine reclaimed her with iron gentleness. The airport shift bleeding into office cleans, Jaime's pickup from daycare where he'd finger paint masterpieces of blue skies and stick-figure families. She tucked Lucas's card into her wallet, out of sight but not mind, a secret pressed between receipts for milk and ramen, until the knock came, sharp as a judge's gavel. Her landlord loomed in the doorway of their apartment, his scowl deepening the lines of perpetual displeasure. "Behind again, Harper. Can't keep this up. Out by tomorrow." "Please," she pleaded, voice cracking like thin ice. "Just a few days. Paycheck's Friday." He shook his head, already turning away. "Too many chances." The door clicked shut and Olivia slid down its painted surface, the hallway's fluorescent buzz mocking her. Jaime played obliviously in the living room, his coloring book a riot of crayons, but she saw the future unravel. Eviction notices, Jaime's confusion, the endless cycle tightening. That night, as she tucked him in, his small hand curled around hers, she fought the tears until they won. Her phone lit the dim kitchen like a hesitant dawn. Unknown number, but the message pierced. Been thinking about you and Jaime? You okay? Lucas. She stared, thumb hovering, the words a lifeline in the dark. What harm in truth just this once? The next dawn found her and Jaime on the curb, a single battered suitcase at their feet, his stuffed rabbit clutched like a shield. The air bit crisp, carrying the faint tang of exhaust from passing cars. Olivia's heart hammered as a black SUV purred to the curb, its tinted window descending like a curtain rising. Lucas emerged, his coat unbuttoned against the chill, and the sight of them, the suitcase, Jaime's wide eyes, the quiet desperation in her stance, twisted something deep in him. "Come stay with me," he said, not a question but an invitation, steady as the hand he extended. "Just until you sort it. Not charity, from a friend." Pride warred with necessity, her gaze flicking to Jaime's trusting face. "Just a few days," she whispered, the words a vow to herself more than him. He nodded, relief softening his features. "That's all I ask." They slid into the leather-scented interior, Jaime's curiosity blooming as the cityscape shifted from concrete to manicured avenues. Lucas stole glances in the rear view, the weight of second chances settling like fresh snow, soft, uncertain, but covering all. The penthouse perched atop Bennett Tower like a crown of glass and steel, its walls a seamless expanse of windows that framed the city as if it were a painting hung for Lucas's private gallery. Mornings here were symphonies of silence, the distant honk of traffic a muffled underscore, sunlight slanting across Italian marble floors polished to a mirror sheen. Olivia woke to it all with the disorientation of a dream half remembered. Jaime's warm weight curled against her in the guest suite's king bed, its linens softer than anything she'd known. The room was vast, impersonal, cream walls, an abstract print above the headboard that whispered of galleries she'd only read about, but she'd made it theirs in small rebellions. Jaime's rabbit propped on the nightstand, her apron draped over a chair like a flag of normalcy. By 6 a.m., habit propelled her from the covers. She padded barefoot to the kitchen, the cool tile a shock after the bed's embrace, and set about breakfast with the quiet ritual of home. Eggs whisked in a copper-bottomed pan she eyed warily, too fancy for her grip, toast slotted into a toaster that hummed like a contented cat. She moved on tiptoe, mindful of the sleeping giant of a house, but the sizzle of butter betrayed her. Lucas descended the spiral staircase in joggers and a Henley, hair tousled, surprise lighting his face at the scene. Olivia hip-deep in his domain, plating food with the focus of an artist. "Hope you don't mind," she said, brushing phantom flour from her sleeves, though she'd used none. "Jaime's up with the birds. Needs fuel. Mind?" He chuckled, a low rumble that warmed the vast space. "Smells like salvation. Better than my usual protein shake." They ate at the island. A slab of quartz veined like marble rivers, Jaime perched on a stool too high, swinging legs and chattering about dinosaurs that could fly if they tried hard enough. Lucas listened with the gravity of a board meeting, nodding at each fantastical detail, his eyes flicking to Olivia with a gratitude that needed no words. She watched them. Fork paused mid-air, the contrast striking, her son's unfiltered joy against the polished restraint of this man who'd built empires from code and ambition. Wealth here was a veil, beautiful but translucent, revealing the loneliness in the echo of his footsteps, the way his gaze lingered on empty chairs during meals. Days wove into a fragile tapestry. Olivia's routine infiltrated the penthouse like ivy claiming stone. Early rises to pack Jaime's lunch, apple slices cut into stars, a note scribbled with "roar," heel laundry tumbling in the cavernous machine with faint strains of an old playlist, Springsteen crooning of working-class anthems that made Lucas pause in the doorway, smiling at the irony. Evenings brought bedtime rituals, Olivia's voice weaving tales of brave knights and hidden treasures, her inflections dancing Jaime into giggles that bounced off the high ceilings. Lucas lingered in the hall, eavesdropping, the sound a balm to the sterile quiet he'd called home. He observed her in stolen moments, the patience as she guided Jaime's pudgy fingers over letter blocks, spelling Jaime with exaggerated cheers, the way she'd pause mid-chore, eyes closing for a breath-stealing second, shoulders sagging under the invisible load. Jaime, that whirlwind of energy, gravitated to Lucas like a moth to porch light. "Do you really boss 100 people?" he'd ask, wide-eyed over dinner, fork forgotten. "What's a CEO mean? Can I be one if I keep my blankie?" Lucas knelt to his level, voice conspiratorial. "A CEO, it's like captain of a giant ship. And blankies? Essential gear. Keeps the storms away." To Olivia's quiet astonishment, Lucas didn't just tolerate the invasion. He amplified it. One afternoon, returning from a park stroll, she found the guest suite transformed. A low bookshelf brimming with board books and puzzles, sourced from who knew where, a nightlight shaped like a starry sky casting gentle constellations on the walls. In the kitchen, almond milk chilled beside Jaime's favorites, vegetarian stir-fries prepped with ingredients she'd mentioned once in passing. Mushrooms. Not tofu, because texture matters. He never crowed about it, never sought thanks. He simply did, his actions a silent symphony of care. And oh, the contrasts. The penthouse's cool minimalism yielding to their warmth. Glass walls that once reflected only Lucas's solitary silhouette now framed triptychs. Jaime's crayon scrawls taped haphazardly beside abstract art. Olivia's apron slung over a bar stool like a rebel flag. Laughter echoed where silence had reigned, turning the space from museum to hearth. Yet, beneath it, Olivia felt the undercurrent of her own fragility. This was borrowed time, a fairy tale scripted on sand. She caught herself in mirrors, tracing the lines of fatigue, wondering if Lucas saw the mother or the ghost of the girl he'd left. One evening, as October's chill pressed against the windows like an uninvited guest, Jaime wilted at the dinner table. His cheeks flushed rosy, fork clattering as a cough rattled his small frame. Olivia's instincts ignited. Thermometer fetched. Cool cloths drawn from the freezer's depths. By midnight, fever raged. Jaime's body a furnace against her, whimpers piercing the dark like arrows. She paced the suite's hall, cloth twisting in her hands, whispers of, "Shh, Mama's here," fraying at the edges. Panic clawed her throat. Hospitals cost, fevers climb. What if... Lucas appeared like a shadow materializing, sleeves rolled, stethoscope improbably in hand from some executive first aid kit. "Let me," he murmured, pressing the cool disc to Jaime's brow, his touch steady as bedrock. "It's the flu, probably," he said after a call to his private physician, voice a lifeline in the storm. "We'll manage. Together. Together." The word wrapped her like cashmere, softening the terror's bite. They tag-teamed the night, Lucas measuring doses of children's Tylenol with surgeon's precision, Olivia murmuring lullabies in Spanish her abuela had taught, their shoulders brushing in the dim lamplight. Dawn crept in, gray and forgiving, Jaime's fever shattering like fragile ice, his breaths evening into sleep's gentle tide. Olivia slumped beside the bed, cloth limp in her lap, exhaustion carving hollows under her eyes. She turned to Lucas, his vigil etched in shadowed stubble, and the words escaped raw. "Thank you, for staying when it hurt most." He met her gaze, the room's hush amplifying the shift, a bridge building across the chasm. In her eyes, he saw not just the mother, fierce and frayed, but the woman who'd once been his North Star, now constellation bright with scars that only deepened her light. Regret, that old companion, twisted anew. He'd built fortunes, but lost the one wealth that mattered. "You don't have to thank me," he said, voice thick, "for seeing what's always been there." She nodded, tears tracing silent paths, and in that fragile hour, vulnerability bloomed, tentative, tender, idioted a first green shoot through winter's frost. The weekend arrived, swathed in autumn's gold. leaves carpeting the avenues like spilled coins. Lucas proposed a picnic, voice casual over coffee. Nothing fancy, just air. Olivia wavered, the offer laced with risk. Too domestic, too soon. But Jaime's whoop of picnic, with sandwiches, sealed it. They ventured to Willow Park, a green lung on the city's fringe where oaks arched like cathedral vaults, their branches heavy with turning foliage. Lucas spread a wool blanket beneath a sprawling maple, its shade dappled and inviting, while Olivia unpacked the wicker basket, turkey clubs on rye, Jaime's request, crusts excised, crisp grapes rolling like marbles, chocolate chip cookies still warm from the oven's memory. Jaime bolted free, a blur of sneakers chasing errant leaves, his laughter a cascade that rippled the pond nearby. Olivia settled cross-legged at the blanket's edge, wind teasing strands from her bun, the sun a gentle hand on her cheek. Lucas joined her, proximity a careful dance, not crowding but near enough for warmth. Silence companionable, earned through the week's intimacies, wrapped them as Jaime's distant shouts provided percussion. Post-feast, Jaime toddled back, backpack bulging with treasure, a crumpled paper unfurled like a banner. "For you," he declared, thrusting it at Lucas with solemn ceremony. The drawing was pure childhood alchemy, 3 stick figures beneath a lopsided sun, hands linked in wobbly lines labeled in blocky caps. "Mommy me, CEO Dad." Lucas's breath caught, the paper trembling slightly in his grasp. Olivia flushed, reaching to reclaim it with a soft laugh. "Kids and their imaginations. He thinks you're important, like a superhero boss." But Lucas noted how she folded it reverently, slipping it into her bag's depths rather than dismissal. The image lingered, a seed planted in fallow ground. That night, post-bedtime hush, Olivia lingered at the kitchen island, mug cradled like a talisman, steam curling toward the city lights beyond. Lucas entered on silent feet, sensing the weight in her posture. He slid onto the stool opposite, the quartz cool between them. "I've been thinking," he began, words measured. "You've got skills, organization, heart. My company's growing. Something flexible, part-time. You'd thrive." She studied the tea's amber depths, sadness veiling her smile. "I appreciate it, Lucas, truly, but I can't." "Why?" The question hung, genuine, pained. Because it wouldn't be earned. It'd feel like owing, and I can't start us that way. He leaned back, respect mingling with ache. "It's not pity, it's belief in you." "Which is why I can't," she countered gently. "I need my feet under me even if they slip." He nodded, the silence stretching, heavy with understanding. Later, as moonlight silvered the counters, he returned. She was still there, gaze lost to the skyline's electric pulse. "I need to say this," he ventured, voice a low anchor. She turned, expectant. These years, relationships came and went, but none rooted, none felt like us. I never stopped loving you, Olivia. Not the way that reshapes everything. Her breath hitched, tears purling but unspilled, a dam against the flood. You don't have to, but I do. He waited, heart exposed. She rose, mug in hand, but paused. I'm not her anymore, Lucas, the girl who believed in easy tomorrows. I'm battle-worn, a mom with mistakes stacked like bricks. You've built this life, and I'd rebuild it with you in it, he interjected softly. But she shook her head, retreating down the hall with quiet steps. He remained, the air thick with confessions half-voiced, wounds aired like laundry in wind. Yet, in the breach, possibility stirred, a quiet revolution against isolation's throne. Weeks unfurled like pages in a well-loved book, the penthouse evolving from refuge to rhythm. Lucas didn't press. He simply persisted. Mornings he'd join Jaime's fort-building sessions, couch cushions toppling under siege. Afternoons he'd brew Olivia's tea, chamomile, 2 sugars, leaving it steaming on the counter with a post-it for the warrior. She found herself softening, laughter bubbling unbidden at Jaime's antics or Lucas's deadpan impressions of stuffy executives. They cooked together, her guiding his hands through pie crust, his adding tech precision to sauces, Jaime underfoot, stirring with a wooden spoon too big for his grip. Trust crept in sideways. Olivia sharing stories of Jaime's first steps, Lucas admitting the hollowness of his ascent, the way boardroom victories rang empty without someone to toast them. The contrasts deepened, the penthouse's vastness filled with small intimacies. Jaime, in Lucas's tie, nodded comically large, strutting as mini-CEO. Olivia's playlists weaving through his classical streams, turning marble halls to memory lanes. She breathed easier, survival's vice loosening, hope a tentative bloom. One autumn afternoon, sun slanting gold through leaves, Olivia hung Jaime's tiny socks on the balcony line Lucas had rigged. Simple clothespins, a touch of home in the heights. Wind whispered promises, and for the first time, she envisioned beyond the now. Jaime in school uniforms, family dinners without tallies of cost. Inside, laughter spilled, Jaime's fort a cardboard kingdom, Lucas feigning defeat with theatrical groans. Her heart swelled, phone rising for a snapshot, when the doorbell chimed, sharp as a fracture. She opened it, smile fading to ash. Derek stood there, gaunt and hollow-eyed, a wrinkled cap twisted in his fists like a noose. The years had carved him meaner, cheeks sunken, gaze sly as a fox in henhouse. "Hi, Liv," he drawled, voice oil-slick, her fingers whitened on the frame. "What do you want?" "Been thinking about you, about the boy." His eyes flicked past, predatory. "I changed, got work. Want to see my son." The word "my" landed like venom. She stepped out, door clicking shut. "You don't get to waltz back. Not after nothing." "I'm his father," he pressed, tone shifting to feigned remorse. "Deserve a chance." Laughter echoed inside, Jaime's, pure and piercing. Olivia's voice trembled. "He doesn't know you. Doesn't need your chances." Derek's mask slipped, eyes narrowing. "Think that rich guy's gonna stick? When he hears how you begged back then?" "Leave," she hissed, but he leaned in, breath sour. "You'll regret this. Live. Courts love a dad story." He slunk away, shadow merging with dusk, leaving her on the threshold, pulse roaring. Inside, Joy continued oblivious, but Olivia stood sentinel, the past's claws raking fresh wounds. Just as light had kindled, darkness slithered back, knowing her haunts, hungry for ruin. The days following Derek's apparition stretched taut as piano wire, Olivia's smiles brittle masks over the churning beneath. She told herself he'd fade like smoke, promises his currency, delivery his deficit, but doubt gnawed, a persistent itch. The penthouse, once sanctuary, now felt exposed, its glass walls a stage for shadows. She scanned streets from balconies, jumped at doorbells that proved only deliveries, groceries Lucas ordered, books for Jaime's growing library. Yet sleep evaded her, nights spent in the guest suite's armchair, Jaime's soft snores a counterpoint to her vigilance. Then the messages began, insidious drips in the digital dark. Late, as she folded laundry in the utility room's hum, her phone buzzed. "You owe me, Liv. Second chance, or lose the kid. 100K. Quick." Sender. Blocked, but the voice unmistakable. Derek's cadence in pixels. Her blood iced, vision tunneling to the screen's glow. Another followed, rich boy's wallets deep. "He won't miss it. Or I'll make noise." She deleted, hands shaking, but they multiplied. Daily venom, escalating. Hiding in luxury? "I'll drag you to court." Unfit mom, no stability. They'll hand him over. Each ping a jolt, stomach roiling, appetite fleeing. Around Jaime and Lucas. She armored up, laughter at breakfast charades, nods at evening recaps of Lucas's day. Mergers navigated like chess, but his eyes searched hers, sensing the fracture. "You okay?" he'd ask, thumb brushing her hand over dessert. "Just tired," she'd deflect, smile stitched tight. The truth lodged like thorns. how to confess the ghost demanding tribute, how burden the man who'd gifted peace with her poisoned past, fears twin-fanged, Lucas entangled in Derek's web, or Jaime pried away, her sole son eclipsed by custody wars she'd no armor for. She'd raised him solo, diapers at dawn, fevers in isolation, love doled in double measures. Derek's specter threatened not just money, but erasure, her as villain in some paternal fairy tale, Jaime a pawn in his grudge. Desperation scripted the meeting. A dingy diner on the city's ragged edge, neon flickering open 24/7 like a liar's vow. Derek slid into the booth opposite, smirk etched deep, coffee untouched black as his intent. "Missed this," he leered, eyeing her coat, Lucas's, oversized and warm. "Cozy with the CEO? Think he'll care when I spill how you clung to me, desperate?" Olivia's nails dug crescents into palms. "No money, you left. End of story." His facade cracked, voice dropping to hiss. "Regret that. Hide in that tower? Courts eat unstable moms. No job history, eviction scars. Jaime's mine by rights." She rose, chair scraping like accusation. "Stay away, or regret follows you." That night, snow dusted the city in reluctant white, wind keening through high-rises like lament. Olivia, perched by Jaime's bed, fingers tracing his sleeping brow, curls damp from bath. The room's nightlight spun stars on walls, mocking her turmoil. In the kitchen's hush, pen met paper, ink bleeding with tears. "Lucas, forgive me. Had to leave. Not safe for Jaime here. You gave us light and dark, more than deserved. Believe in good again because of you. Olivia." She folded it thrice, precise as a wound's suture, left it on the island under the pendant's glow. Bag packed spare. Jaime's rabbit, a spare onesie, granola bar, essentials of flight. Lifting him, blanket swaddled, his weight a anchor and ache, she kissed his temple, whispering, "Mama's got you." Door clicked soft behind, elevator's descent a freefall mirroring her heart. Snow swallowed their steps, the world a blur of white and what-ifs, a mother's gambit for safety and shadows. Lucas stirred to Void's embrace. 4:13 a.m., clock's red numerals accusatory. Snow hissed against glass, city muffled in winter's shroud. Hallway empty, guest suite a tomb, bed pristine, rabbit vanished, air stale with absence. Panic bloomed, cold and clawing. Kitchen revealed the note, paper quivering in draft, words devouring him whole. He crumpled it once, twice, then bolted. Keys jangling, coat snatched, SUV roaring to life in the underground's chill. Snow thickened, wipers slashing futile arcs, roads treacherous mirrors. Voicemails piled. "Olivia, talk to me, please." Shelters queried, diners canvassed. Nothing. Dawn bled pale as he hit the last depot. A squat building hunkered against the storm, its fluorescence buzzing welcome. There, on a scarred bench by the far wall, she huddled. Olivia, coat inadequate. Jaime burrowed against her, blanket frayed. Exhaustion carved her features gaunt, eyes hollowed by vigil. Lucas halted, breath ragged, then knelt, world narrowing to her. Her head lifted, face fracturing. "I'm sorry," she choked, tears carving tracks. "Didn't know else." He threatened Jaime. "Money. Couldn't pull you under." His hand covered hers, warm against chill. "Never pulling. I choose the under with you. All of it," sobs racked her, Jaime stirring faintly. "Scared he'd ruin us. Take him. Or you." "No one's taking," Lucas vowed, voice forge-tempered. "I love you, Olivia. Your fire, your fierce heart. Love, Jaime, the whole wild world you made." She stilled, breath catching on hope's edge. "You? Protect no more alone," he murmured, drawing them close. Arms encircled, Snow's hush witnessing, a triad forged in Fracture's forge. Morning's light filtered through the depot's grimed windows, Snow's fury abated to gentle drift. Lucas bundled them into the SUV's warmth, heater blasting cocoons, Jaime mumbling sleepy queries about snow monsters. Olivia leaned into the seat, head lolling against leather, exhaustion claiming arrears. Lucas drove deliberate, one hand on wheel, the other stealing to hers. Anchor in tempest's wake. Back at the penthouse, he carried Jaime upstairs, tucking him into fresh sheets with rabbit sentinel. Olivia showered under Rainhead's cascade, steam veiling tears of release. Over breakfast, simple oatmeal, Jaime slurping with glee, truth spilled, messages screenshot, Derek's history laid bare like autopsy. Lucas listened, jaw granite, but eyes soft for her. By noon, his office became war room. Lawyer summoned, silver-haired and sharp as scalpel, poring over digital venom. Blackmail, harassment, solid ground, he affirmed, filing motions swift as arrows. Family counsel engaged, custody fortified with walls of precedent. Olivia's devotion documented in daycare logs, medical records, her unyielding ledger of love. Derek's demands, boomerang, his priors unearthed, deadbeat debts, petty cons, a house of cards in gale. The battle loomed jagged, summons served in a rain-slick dawn, Derek's glare feral across courtroom's divide. Olivia testified steady, voice ablade, nights alone with colics wail, birthdays bootstrapped from tips. Lucas flanked her, hand under table a silent oath. Derek's bluster crumbled under cross, promises hollow, threats exposed as bluffs. Verdict, restraining order etched in ink, custody ironclad, his shadow banished to peripheries. Relief washed post-trial, a tide eroding fear's cliffs. Olivia slept deep that night. Jaime's snores symphony to her peace. On the couch, fire crackling in the hearth Lucas rarely lit, she nestled against him. "Thank you," she breathed, head on shoulder. He tilted her chin, gaze depths of sea. "No thanks for loving you. For choosing us." "I'm still afraid," she confessed. "Vulnerability velvet?" "As am I," he echoed. "But fear's just shadow. We outnumber it." Tears traced, but smiles followed, beliefs dawn. Seasons wheeled, winter's grip yielding to spring's murmur, then summer's blaze. The penthouse bloomed domestic. Jaime's artwork gallery on fridge, Olivia's herb pots greening windowsills. She stepped into work, part-time at a non-profit Lucas connected, not obligation but opportunity, organizing aid with her innate touch. Evenings wove tighter, park picnics evolving to beach days, Jaime's sandcastles defended with moats and mirth. Love deepened in quiet cadences, Lucas's fingers tracing her spine in dawn's hush, Olivia's laugh at his burnt pancakes, Jaime dubbing him Captain Fix-It for every scraped knee. Contrasts lingered, his world of deals and dazzle, hers of heart and hustle, but they bridged. Wealth's chill thawed by humanity's heat. One golden October eve, a year from reunion's spark, the backyard garden, once sterile lawn, transformed. White roses flanked an aisle of petals, fairy lights draping oaks like constellations descended. String quartet murmured Vivaldi, guests sparse, her sister wiping sentimental tears. His assistant beaming quiet pride, Jaime in tiny suit, ring-bearer's pillow clutched like treasure. Jaime led, hand in Olivia's peonies bouquet swinging. "Ready, Mommy?" he stage whispered, pride inflating his chest. Tears shimmered in her eyes, gown simple lace flowing like water. "With you?" "Always." They processed, aisle a path of memory. Airport glanced to this altar of now. Lucas waited beneath arch entwined in ivy, navy suit sharp, eyes alight. Exhale of a year held breath. Jaime released her with grin. "She's yours now, Dad." Lucas knelt, enveloping the boy. "Ours, buddy." "Always ours." Vows exchanged in sunset's embrace. Olivia's voice quavered to steel. "You loved me whole, scars and stars. Saw the girl I buried, called her home. Chose the mess, made it magic." Lucas's grip tightened, warmth flooding. "I choose the vigils, the victories small. Choose Jaime's chaos, your quiet strength. Our family, today, through tomorrow's untold." Pronouncement rippled applause. Jaime leaping into fray. Group hug. Laughter cascaded, sealing the mosaic. Twilight deepened, guests departing to Firefly's dance. Olivia barefoot in grass, lights twinkling like promises kept. Lucas encircled her waist, chin to shoulder. Surreal, she whispered, hand over his. Real as us, he murmured. Beginning's gift. Jaime awaited on porch, hands outstretched. They ascended steps entwined, threshold aglow. Home not structure, but shared pulse. Past receded. Future unfurled. Imperfect, profound, whole. And in that wholeness a truth echoes for us all. Love isn't grand gestures alone, but the quiet return, the hand extended through storm. From airport's fleeting glance to garden's eternal vow, Olivia, Lucas, and Jaime wove redemption from regret's threads. Second chances aren't accidents, they're fate's patient hand, waiting for us to grasp. Open the door, dear listener, and step toward the light that finds us. Always.